I want to tell you about a contest that we have going on. It's simple to enter, hopefully easy for you to win. It includes a package for travel, flight and hotel for two, rental car as well, $1,500 value, plus a staff pass for Glazier Clinics valued at $399. And all you need to do is go to glazierclinics.com/win. We've collaborated with Glazier to get this package for you. We're going to have the drawing for this on December 12th, which is the 5-year anniversary of the podcast. Again, go to glazierclinics.com/win to register. Today's podcast is number 14 of 15 from the 2017 season, stuff that still applies today, with my guest host, Terry Shea, on a series that we called The Game Plan. In this episode, we talk about staff loyalty, talk about what makes a special team, and we take a look at some analytics and quality control for your past season in the passing game. So here's our episode with Coach Terry Shea from The Game Plan. Enjoy.
Welcome to The Game Plan, our special season-long segment of the Coaching Coordinator podcast. I am joined here in Week 14 by our guest host, Coach Terry Shea. Coach, it's hard to believe we're heading into, for what some teams is the state semifinals or maybe the state finals here, and looking back on these seasons, how quickly they usually move like this.
Oh, and especially when you said Week 14, I think back to my NFL experience where we would play, I think it was 16 weeks. Boy, it's gone fast, and it never changes. You always go through such preparation for the very beginning of a season, and then before you know it, you're looking back on the season. And I'm sure all the coaches out there have experienced this every year as they continue their coaching progress.
Coach, that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to look back, obviously, on our seasons. You and I didn't necessarily have one where we were coaching this year, although I believe you coached flag football for your grandson's team, right?
We sure did, and the fifth graders found a way to win a championship. So
awesome.
That was, that's doesn't get any better. The real pureness of football comes out at the fifth grade level.
Yeah, that's great. Well, congratulations. I'm sure that was a special experience for you, sharing that with your grandson and your family.
It sure was. And when your quarterback throws 40 touchdown passes in an 11-game season, and he's your grandson, there's a little bit extra special feeling to that.
That's great. Well, Coach, we're going to talk about something. As I was on some flights, long flights this past week to the West Coast, I was reading Urban Meyer's book, Above the Line. And the one thing he talked about is that, at the point he wrote this book, I think it was in 29 seasons, he said, I think he had really 5 teams that he felt were special, that did everything, obviously, they were expected to do, that came together really. And that looking back on his career, that there was only 5 of those teams, I think it's an attribute to how special it is to get deep in the season like this. Certainly talent plays a big part in that, but there's a lot of talented teams out there. Certainly your systems play a part, but I think there's a lot of coaches out there with great systems, and really it boils down to the people. And I think both of us probably can share in that idea that we can look back and point to a handful of seasons, a handful of teams that were really special, where everybody, just performed in a way that makes you look back on it with fond memories.
Oh, without a doubt. And, oftentimes when you put together a season to remember, you think back to possibly the undefeated seasons. And I know personally I experienced 2 of those, one as a player and then one as a coach at the junior college level. But more importantly than the undefeated was a team that I had as my first Division I opportunity to be a head football coach at San Jose State University. And we didn't go undefeated, but we went all the way through and became a top 20 team in the country. But you think back to what made that special, and I might share this with the coaches, Keith, and that is we built that team around loyalty, and we tagged it as absolute loyalty. and it was a loyalty triangle coming from the coaching staff to the players, and from the players to their teammates, and then back to the coaching staff. And I really felt like that was the glue that started the season off, and it kept the season intact. And of course, when you end up in the top 20 in the national rankings, there were obviously some really great performances, but the intangible of being loyal to each other through the 1 point loss to the championship bowl game, that's so important. And you've got to have something, Keith, that kind of defines your signature as a team. And in that case, and that particular team, that's what really triggered, I think, just a great season was how you built the loyalty factor into everything we did during the course of that year.
Yeah, I agree. I think loyalty is one of those intangibles that maybe loyalty isn't always talked about as much, but obviously it's a loyalty that starts with the coaching staff and those guys believing in each other and trusting each other. And just looking at that group, that's not an easy thing to do, and getting that group of adults on the same page to be able to make it happen for the kids. As you look at that attribute, Coach, what are the key things or the tips you'd have to give the coaches that help build loyalty in a staff?
Well, I made it a strong point to make sure the coaches knew that at no point would they ever be able to, in a film review or in a game review among the coaches, would one of the coaches be able to say, I told my player to do this, or I coached him to do that. That in a sense and in a way is being disloyal to your player. And so I made sure that the coaches understood that, and then I made sure the players understood that would not be tolerated among the coaches in these different sessions of review. And I think once the players heard that, they realized that, hey, this isn't just a one-way street. This is coming, through the coaching staff to us, and then we have to, obviously translate that with our teammates. So that was one approach I took, and I felt like, so often the blame game is delivered when it comes to football, and you don't want your coaches to ever fall to that, to that factor of blaming someone else. Take accountability and let's get the job done today, and look forward to the next, achievement that we have as a program. So that's what I would certainly share with the coaches.
Yeah, that's some great stuff there, Coach. And obviously, really not blaming others, giving them that loyalty, taking the accountability for, especially as a coach, that I really have a role in this. And if my guy didn't get it, ultimately somewhere in my teaching process, I failed that guy. And I have to look at what was my role in that too. Now, it doesn't mean he's fully absolved from what he's done, but it's a shared responsibility. And I think, obviously, what you pointed out there is that really comes together and really makes a team that's loyal to each other. And obviously, one of the attributes of a special team.
Keith, as a head football coach, which I'm sure we have a lot of those positions out there in the audience today, but as a head football coach, you want to make sure that it's your accountability and your responsibility to make sure that coaches coach in a way that you need them to coach, and the demanding feature is there in the coaching staff. And I think too often head football coaches, look at the NFL level and the college level and see all these firings that go on, and the head football coach will fire his offensive coordinator or fire his defensive coordinator right in the middle of a season. And there's just no accountability to that head football coach. Maybe the most proud thing that I can reflect back on my coaching career, Keith, was 7 years as a head football coach at the college level. I never once released a coach. I may have reassigned him and put them in another coaching responsibility. But I never released a coach. And I always felt that your coaches are there because of you, and you brought them together, and it's your job to make sure they perform and they do it the right way. You don't point the finger and let a coach go because of your inability to get him to do something the right way.
Absolutely, Coach. I think continue on with this idea of what makes a team special. And one of the ideas or word that comes to mind for me is belief, and a faith in each other. Belief in each other, belief in the coaching staff, belief in the players, belief in the team leaders, the systems you've put together, kind of building a culture around really embracing those things and having faith that it's all put together and is there for a reason, which obviously having that belief then builds to a trust. And it was such an important word for me as a head football coach, as a head high school coach, that I remember we even put the word believe on, we got the decal made up and put it on the bumper of our helmets in the front, that, that was something the players would see, as they looked at each other, is that word believe. And as we, look back on some of our seasons, there was one team that just embodied that idea of belief. It was a team that I took over in a situation that there was a lot of adversity, surrounding, the reason that the job opened. And it really was a team that, everybody in the community says, they can do 6 at 4 at best. And, this is really going to hurt these guys. They're going to have a hard time coming together and pushing through this. So we took that adversity and we actually used it as a catalyst to spur this team on. And it started with, guys, we got to believe in each other. We can't listen to what's going on outside this door. We have to come together as a team. We have to believe and trust in each other. And we did that through the course of the season. We actually had the second best team in school history. We won the second playoff game in school history. And had we not, we lost 2 games to the same team who ended up being the state runner-up that year. If we were in a different region, we very well could have ended up in the state championship against that team. But just how the schedule fell and how the regions were divided up, we faced a juggernaut team. But throughout that season, belief was the key thing. And there was, even late in the season, even in our playoff win, we lost 2 all-state players to injuries, and guys stepped up the next week. And there was no hesitation that, they believed in each other as brothers and they were going to get it done. And I think, as I look back and we talk about what makes a team special, I think it's that. I think a lot of those teams that make it to this point in the season just have a deep belief in each other. And in everything that they do, they don't hesitate to know that when a coach calls a play, it's going to work. And they believe in their teammates. And essentially, they get their job done. They don't look to go outside themselves. They perform in a way where they're doing their 1/11th on the field. And obviously, when you get that, you're going to have some special things happen on the field.
Without a doubt. And I'm sure that team, with the belief signature about that team, that was what triggered, their success, I'm sure. And the consistency that you want out of your football team. So that's a great story, Keith. The other factor that I would encourage the coaches to consider is to make sure, I think back to some of the special teams that I've felt like I've been involved with as a coach, and there was a definition of roles that seemed to fall to each player. And when you can grab, say, 45 football players and make each one of those 45 feel like they have a role, I think you are so far ahead of the game, and it's not easy to do. But if you can somehow make sure that third team offensive right guard, feels like he has some way to contribute in his role, and you try to make sure you point out every chance you get to highlight the roles of particularly the backup players. And I think once you accomplish that among your players, then you have a very special chemistry. And of course, chemistry is it's an overused word for a lot of football coaches. But I'll tell you what, that's what creates the chemistry is when every individual player knows, hey, I have an ability to contribute because this is my role and this is how I contribute. So that would be another great feature to instill into your program as early as you can throughout when you begin a football season.
Yeah, I think you're right there, Coach. And, something I've done over the course of my career and realizing that, I think it was the second head coaching job I had that we needed to play more players. I analyzed, at the time I was a coordinator in that same program. I analyzed our participation, and we had 16 or 17 players out of a roster of 65 guys, let's say, 16 or 17 who would see the field consistently. Some games maybe a little bit more. I'm not talking mop-up time. I kind of eliminated that as a factor in it. Not mop-up time when the game is decided. I'm talking about playing in the meaningful parts of the game. We had 16 or 17 players play, and I thought it's just not acceptable. We have all these kids out here for this. They're putting their time in. We have to get them roles. And it led me to think about, and I'll talk in terms of offense. Obviously, there's ways to get those guys involved in special teams, but made me think about offense and how we could create a personnel system that searched for skills that guys had that maybe were a little bit different than any others. So instead of just saying, okay, we're going to be at that time, we were a 21 personnel team, or in other words, 2 backs and 1 tight end, and then 2 receivers, we started to look for situations where could we get a guy in, maybe where we would use our receiver as a wing. Could we get a guy into that position where he could come in and do maybe a more effective job as a blocker? Could we get into a pass situation where that guy who's tight end, that maybe we can go to that second tight end who's, a little bit more mobile than him, maybe not as thick, but give him enough to do in the blocking game that we're still a threat of the run, but now we have a pass threat as well. And just looking at things a different way and kind of making our depth chart go a little more horizontal than vertical. And I think if you can do that and find ways to do that, it just adds to the ownership in what you are doing. Players want to be a part of it. And especially today, I mean, that's, a decade ago, and thinking of that team, we're living in a society that is on demand, and people want what they want right now. And we have a way to give it to them if we're creative in how we do that. So I think, when you put your systems together, as you're adjusting your systems over this next off season, to think about ways and think about your personnel and where can they contribute? Where can they play a role for your team within what you're doing, and having the flexibility within your offense, defense, and special teams to get those guys involved.
Outstanding, Keith. I still, as a young coach climbing the coaching ranks, I remember Bear Bryant once said, the morale of your team is only as strong as the last man on your bench. And boy, that stuck with me. And as a coach, I always made sure that that last man, or the last group of men, last group of players, boy, they knew how much I appreciated them and how much, we would do to, like you said, allow the depth chart to go horizontally rather than vertically, and give them an opportunity to run into the game and play at some point. I've been asked this question often, especially coaching all-star games like I have in the college level. I always felt like, you've got to get your players in somewhere in the second quarter, because coaches tend to get, when they round the clubhouse turn for the second half and the game starts to become, squeezed in terms of the points, boy, you tend not to play as many players during crunch time. So you try to get your players in the first half of the game, and that allows them to kind of take ownership and give better support even going into the second half. So I'd love to hear what you just talked us through.
Well, Coach, as we look again, and we kind of, obviously we could probably do a whole series on what makes a team special, but I think we brought up some important things today, and I know coaches out there can reflect and look at their own team and find those attributes that obviously, if they're playing here in the final weeks, they're going to continue to rely on, or if they're starting to build for next season, they're going to build around those. But I think the loyalty, the accountability, the belief, the trust, the ability to empower your players to have a role in your team, all important things, and certainly leads to having a special team in the long run. But I think as coaches, that's what we have to look to do, is to make sure we are giving our team the absolute best chance by finding some of those things to build upon and bringing our team together. As we round out the show, Coach, we've been focusing on some things for teams who are finished and have packed up the equipment, and they're getting ready for the 2018 season by looking back at what they've done. And today we're going to focus a little bit on the passing game and give a few tips on how you can get started in analyzing the passing game from this past season. And as I kick this topic off for us, I think it's not necessarily to just find the plays that work the best and plays that maybe need some adjustment, but also finding the components within those plays that have been both productive and others that need a little work. For example, I know in looking at pass concepts and reviewing those in the off season, I'm usually able to find one single route within a pass concept that maybe was unproductive. And for us, that always starts the discussion and the research on what can we do to make that part of that passing route more effective for us as we move into the next season.
Well, there's an area of the game that is at times highlighted, particularly on the over the television, but it's numbers of passes you've thrown throughout the course of the season or throughout a game that travel over 12 yards, and coaches always have to be aware of, what's actually occurring in their passing game. And if you have a quarterback that demonstrates a good passing skill, you want to give him the opportunity to create, big chunk plays, plays that via the passing game can go 15, 20 yards at an attempt. And sometimes you're your own worst enemy because you don't allow your quarterback to extend his arm. You feel more confident in throwing the short game that's anywhere from 12 yards or less. So that's one element to look at as you tend to review your passing game and find out what exactly you have allowed your quarterback to do. There's another thought, and that is, Keith, as you evaluate your passing attack, if your quarterback demonstrates accuracy, then the more accurate he is, the more opportunity you have for double cut kind of breaks in routes or crossing routes where your quarterback has to hit targets on the move. And if he's less accurate, if he's not going to get you, a consistent passing game because he's just not accurate enough, but he does other things very well to be your quarterback, then you have to almost program your routes to be more stationary type of catches. And so that's one way to divide your passing game up and evaluate it at the end of a season based on what style of quarterback you have throwing the football.
That you bring that one up, I can recall a situation where we found that exact type of thing in our analysis. In particular, we were running a dig route, and we found we couldn't hit that one. We were very inefficient at hitting that part of the route. And the change we made, and we never really made it during the season. We had talked about it, but we decided to stay with it, see if it worked. It wasn't the primary one in there. But we really looked at and evaluating that as we went to more of a, I don't want to call it a curl, but essentially a route that became stationary with him running into a window and curling into a window rather than trying to run through the window and hit the guy on the run, which when we went to it the next year made that more productive in our passing game. So it's looking for those little things within each pass concept that you put together, within each pass play. I think that can help you make it more efficient for the next season, because it's not, you do have some momentum you've probably built within your passing game. You definitely have the learning you built within your players. So you don't want to say, oh, geez, look at this, it's not working. You want to find out what small things can you do to make it better and to build upon the learning that you've already installed within your players.
Very much so. And another element of evaluation certainly has to come with the play action pass. And coaches tend to, they don't necessarily forget about that, but they tend not to call the play action pass quite as easily as they do the pure pass drop or the quick pass. So I hope all the coaches will never forget the fact that the play action part of the passing game is and can be your best chance for the big production, the big chunks of yardage, and you want to make sure that your quarterback understands how important that part of the game is as he practices, during the off season and during the summer months, is that he incorporates the play action mechanic as much as he can, because that's where you win a lot of football games.
Definitely, and I would say the last thing as the last tip, because there's certainly more, and I'm going to put a link up to some articles that we have on usafootball.com within our show notes for this. But the last thing I would suggest that as you start to break down your passing game, not just to look at the plays in total, you certainly want to see which ones were most efficient, which ones were inefficient, but then break it down and further refine that into situational and what was most effective for you within each situation, because that's going to help build your menu for the next season. So taking a look at your third downs, for example, and finding out what were our best plays on third and long versus a certain defense. And that's going to lead you to some answers that you can begin focusing your team on as they start to do their work. And, those guys are always anxious to get out. And in most situations now, especially where the weather's better, these guys can get out on, the turf fields and work a lot easier together on their own. And that certainly gives them some direction to go to as they start to prepare on their own before you get into the contact you have with them as coaches.
Keith, you hit on a great feature of successful offense, and that is situational football. The third and long pass, the 3rd and 10 pass. Those are all the situations that can certainly make or break you when it comes to extending drives and getting the ball into the end zone. So very, very well pointed out, and I hope the coaches will always keep the situational part of the game in front of them for any pass analysis you make during the off season.
Well, Coach, before we wrap it up here, I want to give you the opportunity to share a great coaching resource in terms of quarterback play, your book, Eyes Up.
Whoa, that's great. I thought you were going to ask me to come up with a great Thanksgiving story that relates to. I will share one quick story, and that is, I was coaching the Chicago Bears at the time. I was the offensive coordinator, and we were playing the Cowboys in Dallas on Thanksgiving. And I always thought as a youngster growing up, how great it was to play on Thanksgiving. And just think, but nobody told me that when you get your ears pinned back and you get hammered on Thanksgiving, that Thanksgiving dinner doesn't taste quite the same. So all the coaches out there, I hope you don't have to play on Thanksgiving, and keep the winning streak going this weekend. But I wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. And the book that Keith refers to is something very special that I spent over a year creating, and that was the book entitled Eyes Up. And it's a 420-page quarterback development book that can be picked up through Amazon. But it's got a lot of neat gems inside of it. I even had one quarterback tell me he used it as a end of the semester report for his literature class, and he got an A+ on it. So there must be something special about it. Thanks, Keith.
All right, Coach, and happy Thanksgiving to all the coaches out there who listen to our podcast. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Coach, and your family. And we will be back next week to talk about the big game, and best of luck to all those teams still in the playoffs.
Thank you again for listening to the Coaching Coordinator Podcast. Again, we've pulled some strings for you, and we have collaborated with Glacier to offer that package to win a flight, hotel, rental car, and a Glacier staff pass. Go to glazierclinics.com/win.